Goonhammer has partnered with Legalized Mischief to present you with Colin Ward's long-form painting videos. Like and subscribe, and follow Legalized Mischief and Goonhammer for more hobby tutorials.
Hey everyone, it's Colin with Legalized Mischief Productions. Thank you for joining me and welcome. And today we are going to be doing a very special color scheme, a very special Legion the 16th, Sons of Horus, formerly the Luna Wolves, and the Legion of the Arch Traitor, Horus Lupercal, the War Master, and one of the most popular schemes in the Horus Heresy, rightfully so. It is iconic. It is second to maybe the Blood Angels. Really second, as far as the Horus Heresy is concerned, in my opinion, Sons of Horus are the iconic Horus Heresy scheme. So, with that being said, that seafoam green can be interpreted in a lot of ways. Everybody kind of has their own spin on it. I've seen a few that I really liked. Of course, Little Legend, Miles is an expert of Sons of Horus. He's done a million tutorials. His way is very time consuming. So my friend Brian, friend of the show, has a great Sons of Horus green. So I asked him what he did, and it turns out it's Dorn's Arrow, who's somebody I've followed on years for Instagram. His work is phenomenal, especially his work on the Sons of Horus. So he's done a lot of different iterations of this recipe. I will link his blog below so you can see their PDFs for the original Forge World scheme, the revamped Forge World scheme. Dorzero did a scheme with GW paints and Vallejo paints. I'm doing the Scale 75 scheme because it's the one Brian did, and it looks fantastic. I think it's going to work really, really well at this scale as well. So paints I'm going to use black. I'm going to use, dark sea blue, or dark gray blue, excuse me, for a little bit of the highlight on the black. And then for the armor is going to be Arfin Jade. For the base coat, Surfer Orc Flesh for the highlight, and then Surfer Orc Flesh plus Pale Skin for the final highlight and for edge highlights. There's going to be an oil wash involved. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. I can't wait. This is going to be super cool. First things first, though, we are going to get some black down, get that out of the way. Of course, we have to do, the doors. So let me grab the paints I need for that, and then I'll be back in just 1 second. Okay. First things first, obviously we're going to be using black. AK black is my current go-to after Vallejo changed their formula for some god unknown reason after a decade. Jerks. I'd say it was just not a great batch, but multiple bottles purchased over a long period of time in online versus in a physical store, and just didn't work. So this is AK black, and I'm just going to get way too much paint on there. What's going on here? Man, there we go. Nope, skip that. We're going to leave that green. This is not going to be a super special VIP ride. This is just going to be one of the many Spartans in the service of the War Master, the Arch Traitor. It's a great scheme though. For as much shit as I talk about, Horus, that's a great scheme. Wonderful scheme. Little model air dark gray blue. Keep it subtle, keep it low key. We're gonna highlight. Well, straight it out. Highlight the lower portion of the door. Give that reverse kind of panel modulation feel to it. Then we're going to go to the tape. And if you've watched one of these epic scale tutorials before, I apologize in advance. We're going to do it again. But I get to make, I almost said have to. I get to make, 18 of these things. So it bears repeating. But we're going to get some tape. I'm going to be using 6mm Tamiya. Tamiya is the best, except no substitutions. Seriously, just spend the money on Tamiya. So I'm going to pick off that much. And I really want a 4mm wide strip for the Spartan door. That's where I've landed after multiple kind of experiments. So I'm going to take about 2/3 of that off. And then a little less than a square will get me from the top of the door to the bottom. I'm not going all the way up and down the side of the Spartan. I am just sticking to this section that the door is on, right there to right there. Press down. So not even on this larger panel kind of over here. I'm pretty much just sticking to this area here. Same thing over here, a little bit less than a full square. Well, 9 words will be fun. Alpha Legion, that'll be cool. Okay, we got some fun words together. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud. Done. This is the 4th one that I've done. And I'm just thinking through my other schemes. Death Guard, Emperor's Children, Alpha Legion, Night Lords, and one more. It'll come to me. So those are taped off. We're going to let those sit for a second and just make sure they're adhered before we start painting over them. So just one second. No, okay, we're back. And I remembered the word bearers in the meantime. Which, fuck Erebus. Yeah, that scheme will probably be like the least inspired of the bunch. But, I mean, it's a word bearers. What are you going to do? So, first things first, we're going to do an overall base coat of Arfin Jade, which is really a great paint. I like this paint in color. So, this is going to be an overall base coat just straight over the black. Give us a nice, deep jade green. Yeah, there we go. Make sure we get in the cracks and crevices there. I don't want to try and do everything in one coat. I can come back, not of steel. That this is a nice deep. This is a nice deep jade. Dorn Zero really knows his stuff, because this is a perfect color, and it's a perfect color ultra black. You would not expect it necessarily to be this dark. If I were just picking it out of the bottle and saying, okay, this is going to be the first color that I use for Sons of Horus, just picking it up, you would not necessarily expect it to be that dark, but it's the right color. And I mean, I'm confident because Dorn Zero knows his stuff. I mean, he's an expert. He's absolutely an expert. So I've done any test models. Like, this is just, I trust the scheme and I'm going to let it fly. Now, one of my favorite paint names, Surfer Orc Flesh, which is, I mean, it's not that far off from Sybarite Green, Caribbean Blue territory, but it's the same tone as Arfin Jade. And that's what's really important. And now I'm going to do kind of reverse panel modulation, and just really gently, like 2/3 of that bottom panel, and then I'm going to shoot straight down on the top of that side panel there. And then we get that nice, look at that, boom. That is a nice bit of shading. I like this hobby a lot. Back of the bust there. Back of the bust there. Then we can start to get on this front there. And then start to get a little modulation, but I'm going to get under those guns because, yes, they cast a shadow, but not, it's not really to that extent. That's a little crazy. It just looks unnatural. So edge there, top of that, stack there. So a little bit of modulation going through there. Nothing crazy. We're going to edge highlight it, so, it doesn't have to be super special. Bottom part of this. And then over here again, real nice and easy. Through about 2/3 of this kind of side panel, build it up a little bit, and then turn it. Come straight down on top of it. Boom. Panel modulation, 8mm scale. Hit the front corners of the ramp, very important. And then check the back, because I always forget the backs. A little bit on the sides, still keeping out. Do those, leave the bottom of that. Okay, Dorn Zero. Looking pretty good. Nice seafoam green. And then we're going to add a little bit. This is going to be a quick one. Yeah. We're going to add a little bit of pale skin. It's important to keep in mind, this is going to get toned down with an oil wash. So it's going to start off a little bright. And then it's going to get toned down. But what happened to that pale flesh? Boy, that didn't really do a whole lot, did it? Maybe a little bit more. It's lighter, but it's not how it looked in the pictures. Yeah, there we go. That's a little white. Okay. I don't want to go too high. So I think that's going to be more along the lines where we want to be. And then now we're really going to be more selective about how much of this we're putting on. I don't know, really on that bottom. And then right out to the top, just at the top of the wall. Now we have a nice gradient there. The edge there. Fronts. left there, front there. Lower edge. And then right over the top. Not going down the front elevation, but right over the top. All right. Seafoam green. We're there. We are there with the seafoam green. At the middle, it's a little light for my taste. It's just a touch light. So what I'm going to do, it's just a little too light. I lost too much of the shadow. So I'm going to take this Arfin Jade and I'm going to water it way down. So that was like 3 drops of Arfin Jade to a lot of water. You can see how thin that is. Just shooting up, so I'm not disturbing any of the zenithal. I'm just going to hit the top part of this panel here as just a glaze. And just kind of get some of that. There we go. That's better. That's better. Middle of this panel and the back of that hatch right there. Just glaze it down, get a little bit of that shadow back. All right. Wiggle that. Get a quick mask here. This side is not torn. Just a little bit right there. Quick mask. A little bit. Just tone it down. It can get out of hand in a hurry, and I don't want to repaint the whole thing, so I just want to be gentle with the glaze. And we get the fun of everything there. Yeah. All right. So I'm happy with that. I kind of fucked up a little bit, kind of in here, a little, but it's okay. I mean, still glad that didn't happen when I was flying at the model. That's a little better. Okay, I'm gonna stop messing with that. But that's looking pretty good. This one's gonna be more traditional, edge highlight. Chipping, oil wash, whole 9 yards. I'm going to grab tape. Those door. There we go. Door stripes. Classic. The classic door stripe. You got to do the door stripe on the Spartan. Sons of Horus, I like the recipe. I'm happy with the recipe. It looks good, which, is important. I'm going to link below the tutorial to paint the tracks and the guns and the vents and everything. I am not going to do separate tutorials for each scheme. For those shared elements, they're going to be the exact same for literally the entire tutorial series. All 18 tutorials are going to have the same tracks and guns procedure, or recipe, approach, whatever. So when we come back to do the Sons of Horus, the tracks and guns will be done. I will link to that below. And then we can get into edge highlighting, transfers, weathering, the fun stuff. We're going to be doing part 2 of the 8mm scale Epic Horus Heresy tutorial series for the Sons of Horus. And today we are going to be doing a little bit of edge highlighting and transfers and a little bit of chipping. So, if you'll recall, the last couple of paints that we used for our highlight was a mix of Surfer Orc flesh and pale skin. And so that's what we're going to use for the highlight. Oops, got a lot of medium in there. There we go. Poke out the other side there. Got a nice looking brush. Mix that into a nice light green. Mint, very minty. And then I'm not going to go crazy on the edge highlighting, but I do want to get a nice edge highlight. So what I'm going to do here, using the side of the brush, a little bit down from the tip, very gently, catch the edge of the panels here. And I'm going to do what's called lead edge highlighting, where I'm not really going to highlight the underside of things. I'm not really going to highlight the back of things. That's going to change when I get to the back of the tank a little bit, but do the front of this. And we're kind of overcorrecting with how bright this is, because when it comes time to do the oil wash, it's going to tone a lot of this down. You're going to lose a lot of the contrast there. So we want to have it be nice and bold first time out of the gate. Get around the hatch there. Doesn't have to be perfect on this scale, but, still want to do a good job. Just not going to take, forever. This is an important kind of line to get here. And then down the side. There again. This brush kind of falling apart. Look at this. The hinges. And then, of course, the front of the ramp here. That'll get chipped, so I'm not particularly worried about that. Flipping this over, I do want to come in here and get a couple of these little ridges in here, and these, maybe this top edge here, just kind of close in the top portions of the tank there. Top of the exhaust. Of course, if they ever do this game and they ever do kind of plastic Spartans for it, the detail on those is going to be so much crisper and better than this kind of really soft detail on the corners of these armor plates here. So one of the reasons, I'm not doing more epic stuff is, the game doesn't exist. And 2, is because the only option is 3D printing, really. And if they ever do bring the game back, I'm going to want it in plastic. I'm not going to want to fuck around with 3D printed. If it's anything like, it'll be using the same kind of quality, same production materials as like Aeronautica Imperialis, and the detail on those Thunderhawks and Fire Raptors is just insanely good. And this is a pale imitation of as wonderful as the print job is, Eric. Thank you. Is a pale imitation of injection molded plastic Aeronautica Imperialis planes. So anybody who says, "Oh, but it's the same as plastic," it's not. It's not. It's very good, but it's not the same. So we're just going to blitz through these last few highlights here. And this will be good. You know, I'm not reinventing the wheel here with edge highlighting. I'm not getting every panel at this scale. I really don't need to. If these were, you know, my personal blood, like plastic, like personal blood angels, would I take a little more time? Probably, if I'm being honest. But not much. Because it's just, this is not like the most important part of the endeavor here. A lot of the weathering stuff is going to be kind of paramount. But that looks good. Now we have some nice definition on those panels. And we're done with the edge highlighting. Not with the model. But, you know, that was fun. Nice little exercise. You know, exercise the muscles a little bit. The old edge highlighting muscles at 8mm scale. We got some nice definition on those panels there. We're going to come through and chip these panels also, but not until after we're done doing the transfers. So, moving on to transfers. First things first, before I talk about transfers. Oh my gosh, I almost just torpedoed my airbrush needle into my desk. We're going to set the stage. So, Liquitex gloss. And this is just going to go in the areas where I'm going to place the transfer. So, over the doors. I like putting one on the hatch there. I like putting one either here or there. Probably on the front kind of prow there. And then this other door, obviously. And so those are the areas where we're going to potentially put transfers. So now I'm going to get my cutting board here. And I don't have, unfortunately, I do not have, this is just a little paper towel with some water on it. I don't have the 30K transfer sheet for Sons of Horus. If you're going to do a marine project, if you're going to do a Horus Heresy project at any scale, get the Forge World transfer sheets. They are invaluable. There's plenty on those sheets at this scale that will work. So don't let that be like a deterrent. Be like, oh, well, you know, they're not for Epic. Like, it's fine. There's plenty of small symbols and stuff. You know, shoulder pad symbols that work, knee pad symbols that work for this scale. So if you don't have them, or if you don't have access to them or whatever, there are other options available to you. And so I'm going to show kind of where I source some of the transfers that I'm using, even though I don't have the Horus Heresy sheet from Forge World. So this is not the one I'm going to use. But this is an Ultramarines vehicle. Whoops. A little more indirect light. This is an Ultramarines vehicle transfer sheet. This is from, you know, this is the Primaris transfer sheet. So any Primaris vehicle, he's going to get this sheet. These are great for Legion numbers. And they're great for Legion numbers on doors. Specifically, this row here is a great size for Legion number on doors. If you want to go crazy, you could do even the big ass ones. But like 16th Legion is going to be that big. That's going to be a bit much. But this 16th Legion would fit really nicely on that door. So I did it on the Alpha Legion door. So that's an option. If you want it to be a little bit smaller, like if I wanted to try and find something to fit, on that hatch, Then this is Primaris Infantry transfer sheet, and you have all of these Roman numerals, and then at the very bottom is a row of white transfers. I think for this one I'll use a black transfer. So I'm just going to cut off one of these 16 Roman numerals and just put it on the damn paper towel over here. That's going to soak into the backing paper and release the transfer without it going anywhere, so I don't have to fish it out later. Oh my gosh. What is going on here? Too many transfer sheets. Okay. Now I was in kind of a conundrum because obviously I want the Eye of Horus, but I don't have the Horus Heresy sheet. But what I do have are Titanicus transfer sheets. And look what we have here. Plenty of Eyes of Horus. This is the Warbringer Nemesis. This is the War Master sheet here on top. Warbringer Nemesis sheet. But then I don't know that any of the standard ones really come with the eye. So find a friend that has a fancy Titans and they'll have that sheet. And if they play Loyalists, they'll be happy to give up your traitor Eye of Horus. Eye of Horses. Eye of Horus Eye? No, that's too much. So looking at the size of these, I think like that size right there is going to be great for the doors. I mean, it's big, but I want it to be kind of large and in charge. And then I think on the Warbringer Nemesis sheet is a really small black Eye of Horus here. And that's the one that I'm going to use for right here on the ramp. So I'm just going to cut those out. The nice thing about using these modern transfers too is that they are all like individually printed in their own space, and so I don't have to like trim them, which just saves time, which is a-okay in my book. All right. Oops. Close. Light out. This is not time to be difficult. Okay. Cool. So now I have the 4 transfers I need. Put these back off to the side. Get my light back. And those are going to take a minute to activate. Not too long, because they are new transfers. This is the current brush that I'm using to apply transfers. I use a brush rather than like tweezers or something because I just don't want to tear the transfer. A big brush is good. It gives me some flexibility. This is a Redgrass Game size 2. It looks like a witch's broom after using it once to paint models. So it is now a transfer brush. When you get it wet, it does hold a point. So like that's good for transfers too. I just can't paint with it anymore. So, and it's super loose. Like the bristles are anyway. Not to bag on Redgrass Games or anything. I like them. But first one we put down was this little transfer on the hatch here. So I'm just going to put a little bit of micro set there. And then I'm going to grab the Roman numeral 16. Whoops. I'm just going to drop it right on the hatch. That actually looks pretty close. There we go. That looks pretty close. Sure, we'll go with that. And now I'm going to put a little bit more micro set on the ramp. I'm going to pick up the smaller eye. I could have probably used a bigger one if I wanted to. That's fine. It doesn't need to be. That's fine. It doesn't need to be a huge Huge transfer right there. It'll work. There we go. Nope. Too far to the right. Well, God, that's pretty close. What do you think? Maybe move the top a little bit. Ooh, I can't keep messing with this though. If I keep messing with this, it's going to like curl up on me. So I'm going to add a little bit more micro set. I might try and move it one more time. Nah, that's where it is. It's not far off. It's off a little tiny bit, but it's not far off. It's not anything that's going to, notice. And then a nice little healthy helping of micro set there. Grab a Eye of Horus. That one's off by just a little bit there at the bottom. One of the things that the Forge World sheet has that I love is it has a lot of icons in gold, which work really, really well with the sea green and the black. But these white ones are good too. Oh. I'm rapidly, there we go. Okay, that's about as good as it gets. I was going to say I'm rapidly reaching the point where I cannot keep moving this thing around. The vents on this thing are so oversized on the door that it kind of affects where I'm able to put transfers. But it's a small complaint. That's pretty close. Leave that there. Okay. It should be higher. It should be like up here. It's like a little too low, but it'll get all messed up on that vent if I put it up a little higher, and it's fine. It's fine. It's me nitpicking. A little micro soul, and this is going to soften the transfers and just help them lie down all more easier on the surface of the tank. So we're going to let that evaporate. It's going to take just a second. Oops. Down here with the tank. It's looking pretty fresh. It's looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. I like it. And I'm going to take the damp part of this paper towel from the transfers and just going to roll over. You can already see like that's already almost completely integrated into the paint. Just a final pass with the gloss varnish and then matte varnish, and that's going to lay right down. Cool. Just hit it with a little air just to, to dry it out a little bit. And then a little bit of gloss. What this is going to do is it's going to put an acrylic layer over the transfer material, which gives the next acrylic, the matte acrylic varnish, an even material to work on. So the acrylic paint and acrylic varnish are each going to react the same to matte varnish as each other, right? Because they're both acrylics. one of the reasons that transfers, it's also going to fill in a little bit on the edges of the transfer. No matter how well the micro sole works, it's going to be sitting on top of paint. And so the gloss helps to kind of fill in around the edges just a little bit. And then that helps give it that painted on look as well. But one of the reasons that that transfers in general tend to stick out is when people varnish over the top of them. If you don't put anything between the transfer and the varnish, then when you spray the varnish on, it's going to go from an acrylic material paint, and then it's going to hit the varnish, or it's going to hit the transfer material, and then it's going to go back to acrylic. So the transfer material is going to behave differently than the acrylic around it, and your eye will absolutely pick up on that. So that you literally can't see where the transfer starts and stops versus there you can still see a little edge on that XVI there. And now you don't. It's one of my favorite things to watch. That's why I like hit it with air to kind of watch it disappear, because it's just cool. It took me a while to learn how to do that, but I've done it thousands and thousands and thousands of times at this point, so it's still cool to see. When you get that painted on look, it's still super rewarding. So 16th Legion, Eye of Horus, looking good so far. And then the last thing that we're going to do in this section, in the segments, we'll ditch that. We're going to do a little bit of chipping. And for that, I'm going to take a little bit of Game Color Tinny Tin. Just a touch, don't need much. I wish I were batch painting these things, but yeah, there's no reason to. So, yeah, takes away. A little bit of blister pack foam or pluck foam, battle foam. Blister packs don't come with foam anymore, but I'm old. Get a little bit of paint on the foam. Make sure we take a lot of it off. And then just really gently, we're going to work. Remember, this is in scale. So these little chips and stuff are going to be very... we want to keep them small. And then a little bit around the ramp here. If I had an extra Spartan, I would do a Catulan Reaver First Company just staring color scheme, like a black and red Spartan. Those just look sick. The Sons of Horus are like, I think, absolutely iconic Horus Heresy color scheme, and they're only in Horus Heresy. So now what I'm going to do also, I'm going to get some of that edge highlight paint from earlier, get it really, really thin. You can see on my knuckle there, this is like water. And then I'm going to come in here and move really fast, slowly moving closer to that was anticlimactic. Get a little bit more paint. Slowly moving closer. And then I just want a little scratch like that. Little scratch. So little scratches here and there. Kind of micro scratches. But the key is just like, as soon as you see that paintbrush really hit, the more pressure you give, the wider the line. And remember, at this scale, that's going to get real out of scale real fast. So you just want to just barely touch. Barely touch the armor. I don't know if that's really going to make that big of a difference, but I think you can see a little bit of scratching on there. Now I'm going to get a little bit of paint out. And just the last little bit, because that earlier paint was kind of running out of steam a little bit. There we go. That's a little bit more noticeable. And then, of course, we're going to use the same color here in a second. Just a couple more scratches here. Tear off a piece of foam. Get my tweezers. Cool. Not enough paint. Mixed a nice lighter mix there. Make sure to get a lot of the paint off, and then just come through real light. Is this just like the fastest drying paint in history, or am I just getting most of it off when I hit my hand? Okay, let's try this again. There we go. Okay. Out. There we go. It just wasn't light enough. Okay. Makes a little bit more flesh in, and now I have a light enough tone where it actually like shows up on the armor. So that's always important. Make sure your paint is light enough to show up. Not too close to your highlight color. Oh, okay. And now very light. Along the bottom there. And that's it. So a little edge highlighting, a little scratching, a little transfer work. And that thing's looking really good. Nice seafoam green. When we come back, we are going to do the oil wash and then the final weathering. A little bit of pigment work, a little bit of scorching. It's going to be great. We're going to be doing part 3 of the 8mm scale epic Horus Heresy tutorial series, and we are going to be finishing the Sons of Horus, iconic Horus Heresy color scheme. Today we are going to be doing the oil wash and also a little bit of scorching and a little bit of pigment work. So without further ado, going to grab my Liquitex Gloss Varnish. And we just want the oil wash to be a pin wash. So with a nice, healthy coat of gloss varnish. Whoops. I don't paint the underside of my tanks. It's a waste of time. So I don't care that they're not painted. Is it even? Yeah, it's like barely primed. Some of my tanks, the primer didn't even reach far enough. They're like bare plastic in the very middle. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. So not like avoiding the tracks, but also not kind of specifically hitting the tracks. It just doesn't matter. The tracks are like inconsequential. They're going to get some pigment work at the very end. Anything I do before that to the tracks is going to be a moot point. So I just don't even bother. This. Okay. So I'm going to let that cure for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I'm impatient. So 5 or 10 minutes, I'm going to let that cure. And then when we come back, I'm going to do the oil wash. So we'll be right back. All right. I'm tired of waiting. So, and it's dry. I mean, ideally you'd wait like overnight. But 15 minutes is going to have to do. I'm using black because I think it'll give it a really nice pin wash, and because that's what Dorn Zero said to use in his tutorial, so I'm going to stick with that. I think those scratches turned out really nice. I think the weathering turned out really nice. I think this one's going to end up looking really, really good. It makes me want to paint more Sons of Horus, which is a little concerning. You're just going to give it an overall wash. I don't really want it to pool. Like, that was probably a little heavy, but I'm using this giant kind of messed up brush for it, so that's why it was a little heavy. But I can just I can pull off the excess from down there, and I can empty this out a little bit better on this. God, it just pulls so much detail out of the top part of this print too. But this is going to be cool. This is going to be super cool. I'm excited now. I mean, I've been excited the whole time I've been painting this thing, but now I'm really excited because it's going to look really cool. God, I love this shit. God, I love the scale so much. Because ideally, like, you're painting like 5 of these at a time, 6 of these at a time, and just going fucking ham on like a company of Space Marines at a time. God, I hope they do this game again. That would be just fucking chef's kiss. May never play 40K again. There we go. I'm gonna let that dry. That definitely doesn't need to dry like overnight or anything crazy. I'm gonna let it dry up a little bit, and then I'm gonna hit it with the hair dryer to get it all the way there. That way, if you hit it with a hair dryer too soon, it'll push the oil wash into places it doesn't need to be. So it'll push it out of the recesses, which is the whole point of doing an oil wash in the first place. So let's avoid that, shall we? So when we come back, we're going to clean off the oil wash. Okay, and we're back. I'm going to grab my trusty Artist White Spirit to remove the oil. Whoa. Way too much in the cap, thankfully. Does not need to stay there. So I'm going to get my Q-tip. Just lightly cover it. And then I do not have to rub hard. Otherwise, I'm going to get the paint out of the recesses. Worst case scenario, I start rubbing paint off. That is not good. Acrylic paint. You don't have to. You know, the white spirit's going to reactivate the oil wash. So you don't have to, but you get this really nice, look at that, perfect pin wash. I love it. God, that looks so good. Door Zero's a genius. Major props to him for this. Oh, I was going to say, I will link a tutorial below on how to make the oil wash. It's very simple. If there's one thing that you are going to pick up, even beyond airbrushing, it's oil washing. It costs about $20 or $30 to start, and it will improve how your models look, but it'll also really improve your efficiency. It's just a great tool to have in the toolbox. I think even beyond airbrushing, I could get away with like a rattle can. I would rather rattle can a tank and use oils than airbrush a tank and not have oils. That's how strongly I feel about oil washes, and they're super cheap, and you can use them indoors without any problem. So, and when I say cheap, like the $30 that I spent on oil washes like 6 years ago for oil paints, I use the exact same oil paints to this day in this wash, and I've painted thousands of models with the oil wash. And I still have the original, like medium sized. I don't even buy the big tubes. I buy like this size tube for like $8, and it's lasted me literally 6 or 7 years and thousands of models. That looks fucking sweet. That is a good looking little tank right there. I'm fired up now. I mean, I've been fired up, but the last two that I've done have been that kind of metallic, so I haven't got the full like scratching. I haven't got like the full effect. The last couple tanks that I've done. This one I'm getting the full panel modulation, the full thing. So I'm happy. That looks awesome. So I'm gonna let that dry. You're catching a theme here. This is why, like, if I could batch paint these, I would. But I'm gonna let these dry. I hate waiting for stuff to dry, but it's just kind of the price you pay. Actually, before that, sorry, false alarm. I have here Dalarani FW inks. Let's do the scorching first. That way, when everything dries, I can just matte varnish and move on to pigments. I don't have to do anything in between. Perfect. So, Dalarani FW inks, burnt umber and black. I like using these because they're cheap and they have a nice transparency to them, even though they're a pretty saturated color. So that's why I choose to use the Dalarani. I'm going to do what I call quick masking. I don't want to put tape all over this model to do the scorching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of paper, ideally like cardstock, like business card. I'm going to slide it behind the gun. And then I'm going to make sure that when I spray, I'm spraying away from the rest of the tank, right? I'm going to spray towards the front of the tank so that all the overspray is caught by the mask and it doesn't go onto the tank. Now on this side, it doesn't matter as much because I'm spraying away from the tank, so I'm not going to use the quick mask. Same thing over here. Spraying away from the tank. Then when it comes time to spray next to the tank, put the paper there. Make sure I'm spraying towards the front of the tank. And you can see, protect the tank. And now the gun's just coming out of the little cupola there. Same idea, spraying towards the front of the tank. Come on. And then these back vents here. Also going to get a little good. And then, of course, the exhausts. For the top exhaust, I just hold my finger there. Because that's going to work better than a piece of paper. I will bring the paper back for this side, though. Just to kind of spray up and out. That's a little sketchy. And that's fine. I don't want to push my luck on the back there. Now I'm going to get the black. I'm going to do the same thing just at the very tips so that I want to be able to see a little burnt umber behind the black. It's a lot easier to do at 28 millimeter scale. At 8 millimeter scale, it's a little crazy, but it does work. Just usually on bigger guns, but you know, we're fine. This is fine. You can see there, there's a little bit of umber behind the black. That looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. Same thing over here. Mask. Going towards the tank. And then... because now the important thing about this is that you can still see some of the... you still want to see some of the metallic. And then you want this to have this ink, the scorching, to have a matte finish. Now, it's because that soot buildup is going to be matte. Like, it's not going to be... soot is not shiny. It's like the polar opposite of shiny is soot. So, when we go to then matte varnish the entire tank, we will also matte varnish the scorching, and then, you know, we're 85-90% of the way there. Then it's just a couple little weathering effects, and we're home free. So, oof, come on. And so up next is just a little bit of matte varnish. I use Vallejo acrylic matte varnish through the airbrush. I do water it down just a little bit to get it to flow. I didn't used to, but I do now. I'm a believer. I'm a convert. Now everything just chills out and that beautiful seafoam green comes back. Holy smokes, that is beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I think I'm going to order a Sons of Horus transfer sheet from Forgeroll. That looks so good. That looks good. That is a good looking tank at any scale. That is a good looking tank. And we're not even done yet. We still have stuff to do. I am going to let that chill out for a few minutes. I'm going to let that just kind of let everything settle a little bit, clean up my workstation a little bit, and then I'll be right back in just 1 second to finish this thing off. Okay, so we're back, and just for the final touches on Sons of Horus Spartan. First things first, one of my favorite little things to do, and it's a small thing, but it really makes a huge difference. I'm going to be using kind of a dusty, deserty, palace rubble-y scheme here. So I have some splash mud, which is an acrylic weathering effect from Vallejo, light brown splash. Basically, whatever's the color closest to your basing is going to be what you're going to want to use for this effect. This is not thin. The airbrush doesn't love this stuff, but, you know, nobody loves every minute of what they do, so the airbrush can just deal with it. And very light. I want to reiterate just how little of this you need. Just on the bottom to simulate that very, very fine dust that gets kicked up by driving through a dusty atmosphere. Now, if you overdo it, you will throw off the entire color scheme for the tank. You will also obliterate the chipping at the bottom part of the tank. So, but that is enough discoloration to make it look a little dusty, right? Looks so good. All right, now the fun part. A little bit of isopropyl. Not that this whole thing hasn't been fun, but this is the particularly fun part. So I have a couple of just spare bases here. Just a little bit of isopropyl. You do not need much, just a couple drops. I'm going to use clay brown from Secret Weapon. You can use obviously whatever pigment. Unfortunately, Secret Weapon is not around anymore, which is a real bummer because they made wonderful products. And then dark yellow from Secret Weapon, which always reminds me of like pollen, a very pollen colored pigment. And the isopropyl is going to act like a fixer as well, so we don't need to use pigment fixer. If I were doing gaming models, I would probably come back with fixer at the very end, but since these are just going to go on the shelf, I'm not going to worry about it. So just a very light wash. If you can see it building up, it's going to be like 10 times more prevalent when it dries. It really does do you kind of it's misleading how much is on there until it dries. So just do a quick of the clay brown. I love the clay brown. It's a little pink. It has that kind of like palace, Imperial Palace stone kind of color that I imagine, and then a little bit of the dust, a little bit of yellow. That might be too yellow. I'm gonna go back in and get a little bit more isopropyl to kind of chill that yellow out a little bit. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's fine. You know, like it's fine. This isn't for an army project, but this is a very important step. When you are doing armies, doing this on your tanks is very, very important because it ties the tanks into the basing scheme for your army. So if you didn't do this, you just kind of have a bunch of tanks rolling around, and they would look good and they would look like part of your army. But doing weathering like this in the same scheme, whatever the scheme is, urban scheme or whatever it happens to be, doing this kind of weathering ties them together just beautifully. And it really, really helps solidify the overall visual impact of the tanks and then of the force overall. So I'm going to hit this with a hairdryer, but I'm going to kill the microphone because it's loud, but you can see this dry and it's just really cool to watch. All right. So there we have a good bit of pigment, but we lost a little bit of the feel of the track. Now it looks kind of like caked in mud. So what I'm going to do, and this is probably one of my favorite things to do, I'm going to take this metallic iron pigment, which I will literally never run out of, touch it with my finger. Military modelers just do this with like graphite from pencils. They like shave a pencil, get the graphite, stick their finger in it, and then hit the raised portion of the track. Because when you rub it, it polishes it, and you get that shininess of the metallic back. Because those are the parts that are obviously like digging into the road, and those parts are going to stay fresh, even as the rest of the track gets Gets dirty, gets weathered, gets mud and snow and whatever stuck in it. The very last kind of tines of the tracks are gonna be rubbed clean every time, or as the tank goes on. So, and it just looks cool, and it's super, 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 super easy. I just get to, rub my fingers along the track, and it's done. And voila, we are finished with Spartan of the 16th Legion, and it looks sick. I mean, that looks real good. Like if I had a 28 millimeter Spartan that looked like that, I'd be stoked. I'd be a little, and I'd be stoked. This is too much fun. I'm having way too much fun with this. Thank you for your support. As always, I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I know I did. I enjoyed doing it. If this game ever comes around, I feel like some Sons of Horus are definitely in my future, but who knows? So thank you again for your support. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below so that everybody can see the answer. And until next time, take care, be well, paint happy, and the Emperor protects.